It doesn't come with slam doors or final ultimatums. No thunder, no performance. Just a silence so intact it becomes the loudest sound in the room. She leaves like dusk falls, inevitable, quiet, complete. And he doesn't notice right away. Because she hasn't packed bags or screamed accusations. She's still making dinner. Still answering politely. Still performing the rituals that used to mean connection, but now signal only routine. The rupture happened months ago. Perhaps years. Her body stayed. But her psyche had already started to walk. Freud spoke often about how repression leads to neurosis. The emotions we do not express turn inward. They become symptoms, anxiety, withdrawal, even physical illness. For women, silence is often the final symptom. It is not her first response, but her last. By the time she walks away, her silence is a cemetery. Every unspoken hurt is buried beneath it. Every minimized need, every gaslit reaction, every moment she made herself smaller to keep the peace. All those quiet compromises, now returned as emotional ghosts. She does not walk away because she wants to hurt him. She walks away because staying has begun to hurt her. In Freudian terms, this moment is one of psychic preservation. The ego has reached its threshold. She has balanced too long between pleasing others and abandoning herself. The walk away is not betrayal. It is repair. Yet for the one left behind, it feels like a collapse. He might say, I didn't see it coming. But she did. She saw it in every dismissed feeling. Every time he called her sensitive. Every time she offered her truth and was met with silence or logic or withdrawal. Walking away is not abrupt. It is the end of endurance. There's a myth that women leave when they fall out of love. But often, they leave when they still love deeply. That is the tragedy. The love is there, but the self-preservation becomes louder. Her psyche demands reprioritization. Love without reciprocity becomes poison. The walk away is not made from hatred. It is made from love that can no longer survive in captivity. Freud's theory of the death drive, thanatos, suggests that we all carry an unconscious pull towards self-destruction. But when a woman walks away, she is defying that pull. She is choosing life over repetition. She is saying no to another round of emotional starvation. No to being the container for someone else's avoidance. It takes everything. Because she doesn't just leave him. She leaves the fantasy. The one she built, the one she fed, the one she hoped might one day become real. She leaves the version of herself that tolerated, waited, forgave too quickly. The walk away is not only external. It is internal. A separation from the part of her that's settled. She reclaims her projection. Projection is another Freudian idea, assigning our own feelings to another. She projected her potential onto him. Her capacity for depth, reflection, transformation. She believed he could meet her there. But now, walking away, she reclaims that projection. She sees it belonged to her all along. And perhaps for the first time, she turns that gaze inward. She begins the process Freud described as individuation, the integration of the unconscious with the conscious self. The walk away is the first step in this integration. She no longer needs someone else to mirror her worth. She becomes the mirror. The silence that accompanies her departure is not a tactic. It is a consequence. There are no words left. Not because she is cruel, but because she has said them all. In journals, in therapy, in late-night monologues rehearsed in her head. Words that were never met with presence. Now silence is presence. Her presence. He may reach out, try to coax her back. But what he misses is that the walk away is not about geography. It is about psychic territory. She is no longer accessible in the same emotional way. She has retracted her essence from the dynamic. And that is what he feels. Not just loss, but absence. The absence of being needed. Of being the emotional center. Of being the one she orbits. She no longer orbits. She centers herself. It is a death, but also a birth. This is why Freud's ideas remain timeless. Because the unconscious speaks in behaviors we often misunderstand. Her walk away isn't a mystery. It's a message. A message that says, I have spent enough time trying to be heard. Now I choose to hear myself. And that is why when a woman walks away in silence, it is not the end of a relationship. It is the beginning of her return to herself. It doesn't matter how many times she said it before, what hurts, what she longs for, what feels hollow in his presence. She could have said it gently or desperately. She might have cried, whispered, shouted. But eventually, something breaks in her quietly. And this time, she doesn't explain. There's a phrase Freud used where ID was their ego shall be. It describes the slow march from chaos to self-possession. This chapter is that march. Not dramatic, just steady, silent, real. She no longer feels compelled to justify her needs. She simply recognizes them. And once a woman knows what she needs, really knows, something in her changes. She becomes unmoved by what once disoriented her, his hot and cold presence, his resistance to depth, his emotional amnesia. He might see it as coldness, withdrawal, punishment, but that's his projection. He's witnessing the moment her identity detaches from his perception of her. She no longer tries to be seen through his eyes. She has turned her gaze inward. The woman who walks away in silence is often painted as the villain in his narrative. But in her own story, she is the rescuer. Not of him, of herself. She steps out of a system she tried for too long to fix with love alone. Her emotional exit is not an act of cruelty. It is a boundary finally enforced without apology. And this silence, it isn't a void. It's her voice, transmuted. No longer in service to someone else's comfort. Freud believed that when we cannot express something directly, it returns indirectly. Through symbols, dreams, slips. Her silence is symbolic. It is the dream she no longer ignores, the one where she is not begging to be chosen. She's lived in a psychological loop, hoping that if she just communicated better, softer, more patiently, he would respond. But she has now recognized that it wasn't the volume or tone. It was the unwillingness to hear her at all. The silence isn't sudden. It's cumulative. It forms slowly, after the 1,000th time her sadness was met with silence. After the 100th time her needs were labeled as too much. After the 10th time, she forgave without repair. And what Freud called a repetition compulsion, the unconscious drive to repeat unresolved emotional experiences, begins to unravel. She has seen the pattern. And now she stops. He thinks she's giving up. But it's the opposite. She's waking up. To walk away in silence is not to suppress emotion, is to redirect it. She pours it now into rebuilding, into rest, into remembering who she was before she dimmed herself in the name of love. Her silence is filled with new rituals, closing tabs in her mind that were always open, returning to music she once loved, noticing her own breath. To him, she might seem like a stranger, but to her, she's becoming familiar again. He asks himself, why didn't she say something? But she did, over and over. What he really means is, why did I only start listening once she went silent? This is the moment Freud described as the return of the repressed. All the things she pushed down to keep the connection alive, resentment, disappointment, self-abandonment, resurface. But this time not to explode, to integrate. She does not need closure. Not from him. She creates it within. She no longer performs emotional labor for two. She reclaims her psychic space. She may still feel pain, but now it is clean pain. Not the murky ache of needing what will not come. Not the chronic depletion of trying to earn affection. Her grief is sacred. Her sadness is no longer silenced. She lets it pass through without shame. This is individuation. Not detachment as defense, but as devotion. In silence, she discovers her emotional language was never wrong, just misplaced. She begins to rewrite her definitions. Love is not intensity. Love is presence. It is reciprocity. It is safety. And he is left in the echo. The conversations she tried to have. The softness he dismissed. The intimacy he feared. Her absence is not punishment. It is reflection. He may feel lost, confused. He may want her back. But not out of love, out of need. Out of the comfort of her emotional labor. And she knows this now. She does not return. She reinvents. And in the quiet of her exit, something ancient is healed. He sits alone now, not because she vanished overnight, but because he finally realized she is no longer there in the way he remembers. Her voice once filled their spaces, her laughter rounded out their silences. But this new silence, it feels sculpted, intentional, not passive but active, not waiting but witnessing. Freud believed that much of what disturbs us in others is what we have yet to face in ourselves. Projection, a defense. He had often blamed her for being emotional, irrational, needy. But now that she is gone, completely and without warning, he realizes she was not the one flailing in emotion. He was the one avoiding it. In the mirror of her silence, he sees himself clearly. His own emotional detachment, his resistance to intimacy, his dependence on her nurturing to maintain an illusion of emotional safety. The very traits he once dismissed in her now feel like absence in him. This is the beginning of reckoning. The woman who walks away in silence is not staging a performance. She is breaking a trance. One where her value was tied to what she gave, what she softened, what she forgave. Now, she is no longer available as a buffer. He meets himself alone, without her emotional labor to translate his needs, filter his sharpness, absorb his silence. And for the first time, he feels the echo. Not just her absence, but his own hollowness. His unspoken fears. His inability to express vulnerability. Her silence dismantles the structure they both performed inside. She is not punishing. She is simply finished. Freud wrote that dreams reveal what we repress. But waking life, too, begins to unravel when the psyche is overstretched. And this is her waking. Her walking away was not a protest. It was a return to herself. In this new chapter, she no longer feels guilty for choosing peace over pleasing. She no longer needs to be understood to feel valid. The mirror she once held up for him to see himself, she's turned it around. Now it reflects her. She sees the versions of herself that begged, that explained, that cried in bathrooms and smiled at dinners. She mourns those selves. Not with shame, but with grace. They did the best they could. But now they're done. Her silence is not a void. Is a garden. She plants rituals. Music in the morning. Stretching. Saying no without over-explaining. Laughing with friends who ask, "How are you really?" Her life fills with small, deliberate choices. Meanwhile, he replays conversations. What she said. What he dismissed. The pauses he thought were overreactions. The times she went quiet, and he assumed all was well. Now he realizes those were her exits. One by one. Internal, invisible. And in that realization something cracks. He is not a villain, but he was asleep. Asleep to her needs. To her words. To his own emotional illiteracy. Her silence is not an accusation, but an awakening. For women who walk away in silence, the story is rarely simple. They carry grief with elegance. They carry memories with dignity. But they no longer carry the relationship alone. And when that burden is put down, something else is lifted, their essence. The woman who walks away has not stopped loving. She has stopped leaking. Her silence is not a wall, but a boundary. Not to keep others out, but to keep herself in. He may reach out. A text. A call. A moment of panic. And she may answer kindly. But she no longer reaches. There is no longer a plea in her tone. Just clarity. Her nervous system no longer orbits his unpredictability. It rests. Freud's theory of transference comes alive here. Her previous efforts were not just about him. They were about unhealed wounds. Perhaps a father who couldn't show up. A partner who left without closure. She tried to heal through him what should have been held long ago. But now she holds it. The silence becomes sacred. A temple. She builds it brick by brick in stillness. No longer reacting. Simply being. He will remember her. Not in anger, but in ache. In the places where she once translated their emotional world. He will hear her silence in songs, in the pause before sleep, in moments he wishes he could undo. But she will not return to be remembered. She is now present in her own life. And that is the final lesson her silence teaches. Presence is not about being with another. It is about being with oneself, fully, fiercely, and finally. There's something serene about the woman who's no longer waiting. Not for closure. Not for an apology. Not even for understanding. She's not bitter. She's not angry. She's simply beyond. The emotional detachment he reads as distance is something much more sacred, devotion. To self. To sanity. To truth. Freud might call this sublimation, the redirection of instinctual drives into socially acceptable expressions. She no longer argues or performs. She no longer gives shape to her pain through expression that lands nowhere. Instead, she channels it. Into art. Into ritual. Into quiet laughter with friends who don't ask her to shrink. She becomes her own witness. There is a myth that a woman must rage to reclaim herself. That she must burn everything down. But many women choose a different revolution. They choose to become unavailable, not unreachable, just uninterested in returning to old wounds. She doesn't need to slam the door. She simply walks through it and leaves it open behind her. She doesn't need to say, "You lost me." Her absence says it with more clarity. For years, she carried a false self, Freud's concept of the ego distorted by social expectation. The good girl, the understanding partner, the emotionally available one. She performed that self for him, for the world, even for herself. But now, she's uninterested in performance. She seeks congruence. What she feels, she honors. What she needs, she protects. What she loves, she returns to. He doesn't recognize this version of her. Not because she's changed into someone new, but because she has returned to someone ancient. The woman beneath the roles. Beneath the caretaking. The woman who does not orbit another, but walks as her own axis. The silence between them now is not filled with tension. It's filled with transformation. And he senses it, even if he can't name it. The way her energy no longer leaks into his moods. The way her name no longer shows up in his inbox. The way her presence feels like a closed book. And still, he may wonder, was it really that bad? But that question reveals everything. Because it was never about a singular event. It was the erosion, the consistent neglect, the emotional malnourishment. She did not leave because of one big thing. She left because of 1,000 small ones. And that is the cruelty of not listening when she's still speaking. Because now, in her silence, she speaks the truth that cannot be negotiated. She has entered what Jung might call integration, no longer split between her longing for love and her longing for freedom. She realizes now love without freedom is bondage, and so she has chosen the latter. She may still miss him. That's the quiet part, the part she doesn't share, the moments when his absence feels like an ache in her ribs. But she knows now, missing is not a reason to return. Love is not enough if it demands self-betrayal. She has built an inner home, one that doesn't need approval to feel stable. She adorns it with the parts of herself she once muted. Her anger, her sensuality, her ambition. She does not apologize for them anymore. He might try to reach her. A memory, a song, a sudden realization of everything she was. But he reaches too late. Because now, her loyalty belongs not to him, but to her own becoming. Freud warned that when we do not make the unconscious conscious, it will rule our lives, and we will call it fate. But she no longer calls this fate. She calls it choice. She no longer romanticizes potential. She respects reality. She walks in silence, not because she has nothing to say, but because everything that needed to be said was already lived. And now, she has nothing to prove. He may tell himself she's cold, detached, but in truth, she is finally warm with herself. Detached not from love, but from illusion. And that is what haunts him. Not the silence, but the clarity it represents. Because once she was soft for him, now she is soft with herself. She has not hardened. She has healed. She doesn't need a dramatic finale. No declarations. No breakdowns. Her silence is not closure, it's transcendence. A threshold crossed without a word. Not because she doesn't feel, but because what she feels no longer fits inside the dynamic that defined her for too long. Freud believed that liberation is born through self-awareness, through peeling back the distortions we internalized. Her silence is a signal of that peeling, a letting go of roles, patterns, personas. She no longer explains herself into exhaustion. She no longer sees value in being misunderstood. Her withdrawal is not escape. It is alignment. She remembers the early days. How she tried to be everything. The safe place, the inspiration, the anchor. She contorted herself to keep the relationship alive, mistaking survival for love. But now, she sees clearly, she was never meant to rescue anyone. Not him. Not even the version of herself who thought enduring pain was a badge of strength. Her silence is not indifference. It's reverence for the self she buried in service to someone else's comfort. And as she returns to herself, there's grief. For time lost. For parts of her that waited too long. But there's also grace. Because she did what she could with what she knew. He still thinks of her. Of course he does. He thinks of her when he hears a song she once played on Sunday mornings. When he sees her handwriting in an old book. When someone asks how he's doing, and her name forms in his throat, unspoken. But he also thinks of what he didn't do. The words he didn't say. The feelings he never named. The moments he felt her pulling away and chose comfort over confrontation. Her silence is a memory now. Not of what she lacked, but of what he couldn't hold. And maybe now he's learning. Not because she taught him with lectures, but because her departure was a mirror. A moment he can't undo. A truth he must now carry alone. In Freud's world, repetition is inevitable, unless interrupted by insight. Her leaving was that interruption. A pattern broken. A new neural path laid down. Not through force, but through absence. Through the quiet certainty of no longer chasing what doesn't see her. She no longer needs to be understood. She needs to be free. And now she is. She wakes slowly, makes coffee in silence, feels the light on her skin not as background, but as belonging. She walks barefoot in the kitchen, body no longer bracing, heart no longer hungry. Her inner world is finally hers, no longer negotiated. She texts herself reminders, laughs at memories that used to make her cry. She writes. She rests. She does nothing. And it is enough. There's a dream she has now and then. She's standing at the edge of a field, barefoot, wind in her hair. There's no one around. And she's not searching. She's simply breathing. This is the life she chose. Not because she gave up on love, but because she stopped giving up on herself. She knows love will come. But next time, it will not ask her to split, to bend, to bleed. Next time, it will speak her language. Or she will keep walking. Because now she knows silence is not the absence of voice, is the presence of truth. And that truth is this. She didn't leave to be cruel. She left to come home. To herself. If this resonated with you, like and subscribe for more explorations into the unconscious mind, emotional healing, and relationships. Have you lived a goodbye in silence? Share your story below. Your words may guide someone back to their truth.